Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'll be going through Hong Wen School P5 Science. This is their 2025 WA1 test paper. So all of these questions are on the topic of reproductions in plants and animals. So you would have expect 8 MCQs and 4 open-ended questions. Okay, most of the open-ended questions are taken from past PSLE question. So let's take a look at question number 1. So which of the following characteristics is or are passed down from parent to young? Okay, so it's a characteristic that's inheritable. Okay, so in this case, length of your hair, no. Okay, why this is not something that cannot be passed down from parent to young? Because it is a choice. Okay, you will choose to have long hair or short hair. This is something that cannot be inherited. Okay, so other than that, we can call it your preferences. Okay, so if A is wrong, right, that means 2 and 4 is out. You only left with B, C, D. Okay, so in this case, type of eyelid. Yes, this is something that can be passed down. It can be single or double eyelid in this case. So if B is correct, then naturally we already know the answer is 3. C and D must be correct. Okay, so in this case, let us continue to look at C and D. Okay, type of earlobe, yes, attached or detached earlobe. Okay, presence of dimple, yes, is something that can be inherited. So 3 is the correct answer. Okay, so question number 2, which of the following statement about human reproductive systems is not correct? So when you see this, right, not correct, highlight this. So you are trying to look for a false statement. Okay, before you attempt this question, right, you need to know the reproductive parts in the human body systems, and there are 3 most important one. Okay, you have the male, which has the testes that produce the sperm, or indirectly we call it the male reproductive cells. Females, we have the ovary, which produce the eggs, which is the female reproductive cell. So fertilization occurs when sperm fuses with an egg. And where does fertilization occur? At which position or at which location? It occurs at the fallopian tube, not the womb, not the ovary. At the ovary. Okay, not the womb, not at the ovary, is at the fallopian tube. Okay, so the testes produce sperm. Yes, this is correct. So don't choose. Don't choose. Okay, so the fertilized eggs develop in the ovary. Okay, this is wrong. The fertilized eggs develop in the womb. Okay, the fertilized egg develop in the womb, but the fertilization occur at the fallopian tube. So there's a difference. Okay, the fertilization means where the sperm meet with the egg. Okay, so in this case, this is a false statement. So number 2 is the correct answer. Okay, so only one sperm is able to fertilize with the egg is definitely correct. So the last one is also correct. Information in the male reproductive cells, male and female reproductive cells are passed down to their offspring. Okay, so let's take a look at number 3. The diagram shows human and plants reproductive system. So in this case, which part PQRS has the same function as part A? Okay, so you need to know part A is the testis. Okay, which is the part where it produces the male reproductive cells. Okay, so in this case, right, if we want to match it with a flower, right, which produce the male reproductive cells, we need to look for the anther. We need to look for the anther of the flower, because the anther, right, over here will produce and contain pollen grain, and in this pollen grain, right, it will contain the male reproductive cell, okay, which is inside the pollen grain. So in this case, which one is the anther? P is the anther. P is the anther. So the answer must be number 1. Okay, Q will be the stigma. Okay, R will be the petals. S over here, it looks like it's pointing to the inner part of the ovary. So I will say that this is the ovules. This is the ovules in this case. I'll say that this is the ovule. So with that, for number 3, 1 is the correct answer. Okay, no doubt. Okay, so let's move on to question number 4. The question number 4 shows you a table with the different characteristics of flower A, B, and C, D. Okay, a tick indicate the flower has that characteristics. So which flowers are most likely to be insect pollinated. So let's go through them one by one. Okay, so for insect pollinated, let's say A, right? A have dull and small petals. Okay, this is not what would I expect for insect pollinated flower. Okay, this is most likely to be wind. Okay, because insect pollinated flowers need to have attractive petals, large petals, in order to support the weight of the insect. Okay, so A is out. So if A is out, 1 and 3 is out. So let's take a look at B. Okay, so for B, you have the sticky pollen grain and you have the sweet smelling nectar. Okay, so as I mentioned over here, my notes. Okay, the sticky pollen grain is to do what? Is to ensure that pollen grain can attach easily to the body, the legs, or the hair of the insect, so that they have a chance to get the pollen grain on their body and have a chance to transfer it to the stigma, increasing the chances of it getting pollinated. So definitely we will expect sweet smelling nectar, yes, because we want to attract insect to the flower so that the pollen grain have a chance to attach to it. Since we know that B is correct, right? So it's either number 2 or number 4. We just need to check with D. Okay, but let's go through C first. C, okay, has entered that stick out. Okay, this one is most likely to be by wind as well. Okay, because when the anther is sticking out of the flower, they have a higher chance of the wind blowing at the pollen grain that is on top of the anther. So then the pollen grain can be easily carried by the wind and land onto the stigma. So this is the characteristics of a wind pollinated flower, not insect. So C is definitely out, A is out. So let's take a look at D. Okay, D has a stigma that's hidden in the flower. Okay, this is something that you will expect to find in an insect pollinated flower. Why? Because when the stigma is quite hidden, right? Okay, let's say you have a large petal, okay, then the insect, okay, would have to go in deeper, okay, into the flower, and they will have a chance for the pollen grain to brush onto their body, increasing the chance of it getting pollinated. So in this case, right, it's really forcing the insect to go in within the inner space of the flower. Okay, so D is something that you will expect as well. Okay, for this. So B and D is the correct answer. So the correct answer should be number 4 in this case. Okay, so let's go on to question number 5. So question number 5, right? Adam did an investigation on 2 similar flowers, P and Q, okay, from the same plant. One of the flower is shown in the diagram below. So Adam removed one part of P and one part from Q. Okay, after some time, only P developed into a fruit. Only P developed into a fruit. Which of the following shows the part that the flower, part of flower that Adam has removed? This kind of question, label them, okay, very clearly. A is stigma, B is anther, D, right? Let's zoom in a little bit. It's heading this part here. So I will say that this is the ovary. It's pointing towards here, right? This part, I will say that is the ovule. But for now, since it's pointing at the outer circle, okay, let's take it as the ovary. Okay, and for C is petals. Okay, so in this case, right, which of the following shows the part of the flower that has been removed such that P can still develop into a fruit while Q cannot develop into a fruit, cannot develop into fruit? Okay, usually the one that cannot develop into fruit, right, means the ovary or the stigma has been removed. So that means for Q, right, you expect D or A has been removed. So you take a look, B and C will not, because even if you remove the anther, the pollen grain for another flower can still land onto the stigma of Q to allow it to be pollinated. So and petals, with or without petals, the flower can still be pollinated. So in this case, these two two options, 3 and 4 have D, right? It's most likely to be the answer. That means 3 and 4 got no D. For flower Q, no D means no ovary. When there's no ovary, cannot develop into fruits. And then this matches with whatever observation that's being made. So 3 and 4 must be the correct answer as of now. So let us remove these two. So only left with only left with 3 and 4, 1 and 2 being removed. So we got A and C. So A being the stigma, C being the petals. So between these two choices is very obvious. Okay? For flower P, the stigma, if you remove, it cannot be pollinated, it cannot be fertilized, no fruit developed. But we say that since fruit is developed in flower P, right, the stigma must be present. Okay? So 3 cannot be the answer. It must have been removed, the petal. For flower P, the petals must have been removed. Therefore, the stigma and ovary still remain. Pollination can take place, fertilization can still occur, fruit can still be developed. So in this part, okay, so number 4 is the correct answer. So the clue for this kind of question is that, right, every time, let's say you have fruit removed, okay, you that means the parts that is being removed parts removed must be the female reproductive parts. Okay, and it's really the stigma, ovary, or ovule that's being removed for this few part. Okay, then if the fruit can still continue to develop, it probably means that the anther is being removed or the petals is being removed. Because without the anthers, without the petals, as long as they have the female reproductive parts, pollination can still occur because the pollen grain from another flower can still come in and pollinate the flower, and then the fruit can still be developed. So with that, that will be number 5. Okay, question number 6. A fruits of plant X was cut open, okay, as shown below. So you have a fruits that's over here. They show you that there's seeds. Okay, notice these are plural. So that means they have many seeds. Okay, and they tell you that it's centered, brightly colored fruit. So usually, right, when you read this kind of information, right, straight away most of the time, right, you can link it to, right, it is probably is animal dispersed fruit. Okay. Okay, why is it animal dispersed? Because the centered and brightly colored fruit, right, will attract animals to come and feed on them. And the picture over right here that's showing you is actually a lady finger. Okay, and you cut open the lady finger, you realize that there's actually a lot of seeds in between. And usually who eat lady finger? Usually the animals, human like us, we do eat them. So in this case, based on the diagram above, what can you conclude about plant X? They are dispersed by water. No. Okay, because of this information, right, cannot be dispersed by water. Okay, usually since they are dispersed by water, they have waterproof covering or fibrous husk, okay, to trap air so that they can stay afloat on the water. So one is out. There are many ovules in its flower. Many ovules. That's correct. Because why? Can you see that there's many seeds? Okay. Because there are many seeds, these seeds must have developed from many ovules. Okay, many ovules. Okay, so in this case, number 2 is actually the correct answer. Number 2 is actually the correct answer. Okay, so let's take a look why 3 and 4 is not the correct answer. Okay, there are many ovaries in its flower. This is wrong because over here, this whole thing, right, is developed from one ovary, not many ovary. One ovary. Okay, in this case, so 3 is out. Oh, for number 4, the flower of plant X is pollinated by animal. So in this case, this picture show you a fruit. They didn't show you a flower. So there's really not enough information to tell this. Okay, even though the fruits over here show you that it is highly dispersed by animal, but the flowers of this fruit may not be pollinated by animal. It could be pollinated by wind. It could be. We just don't have the information to tell this. Okay, so that's why number 4 is also out. Okay, question number 7. Jonathan wants to find out how the number of seeds affect the growth of the plant. To prepare for setup, C all the way until F. A, C all the way until F. Okay, so they have number of seeds, amount of water added daily, and the location. So can you take a look at this number of seeds? So this is actually your change variable. Okay, let me put it here, change variable. So this should be the one that should be different. Okay, the rest over here, these are variable that should keep be the same, because if you don't keep them to be the same, it might affect the growth of the plant. Okay, so this should be fixed variable or constant. So knowing this becomes very easy. Amount of water added daily must be the same. So 50, 30, 0. 50 is the same. So you take a look, location beside the window, This is probably trying to keep the warmth or the amount of light to be the same. So in this case, right, C and E should be the correct answer. But just check over here, 10, 20, this is different. This is indeed correct. 50, 50, they are the same, beside window. So in this case, the answer must be C and E. C and E. In this case, the one that tallies should be number 1. So 1 must be the correct answer. Okay. So question number 8 is really about seed dispersal, and you're trying to use the dispersal pattern of the young plant with respect to the adult plants to find out how is it being dispersed. Okay. It could be dispersed by wind, okay, water, animal, or splitting. Okay, let's do some very quick recap over here. Okay, usually by wind, right, you follow wind direction. Okay, usually by water, you follow you look for young plants that are near the waterway. Okay, near the waterway means near the river, near the shore, near the ocean. Okay, animal, random. Okay, splitting will be cluster around. Okay, so these are the dispersal method followed by their dispersal pattern in this case. Okay, so as you can see, number 8, the diagrams below shows part of the land where 3 types of plant XYZ are growing. So after 5 years, the number of each plant or the number of each type of plant has increased as shown. Then they ask you XYZ, how are these being dispersed? So first up, locate where is the parent plant. So Y, okay, Y over here. So take a look at this. Okay, Y highlight. Okay, this is the parent plant. Okay, X. Okay, X, this is the parent plant. So for Z, this is the parent plant. It looks like it's going to be here. Okay, so it looks like this is here. Okay, so you can see that for X, right? X. Okay, let me use green color. Can you see X? They are mostly found near the river. So this could mean that X, right, the seeds just drop, then they disperse, okay, down by the river, okay, or it could float across, then drop across the shore, and they germinate from there. So I'm pretty sure that for X, right, it should be water. Okay, for X it should be water. So just take a look at this. Water, correct. So 1 out, 4 out. Then you take a look at this between these two. Okay. So Y may be a little bit tricky. So because I got one over here, I can't really tell the pattern. Okay, but Z is very easy. Z, right? Can you see? Z is clustered around. So straight away, it seems it's trying to tell me something. It's clustered around the parent plant, so must be splitting. Okay, so in this case, I can't resolve it. Okay, because if X is water, then Z is splitting. There could be only one answer. The only answer must be 3. Okay, that means Y must be animal, which shows that I cannot find a pattern because it is random. Okay, so usually for those young plant or location or young plant that look very random, you cannot find any pattern. Usually they are being dispersed by animal. Okay, for wind, water, splitting, you definitely can find a pattern. So try when you're working on this, right? Try to find out these 3 first. Okay, leave this to the last. Okay, because animal is random, you can't tell anything. Okay, so with that, we are coming to the end of the MCQ. So let's move on to the open-ended question. So Open another question, section B, he'll write your answer in the space below. So first question, describe the process of fertilization. Okay, so in this case, it's really asking you for definition. Okay, this one is actually pretty straightforward, very easy. So if you go and look at your P5 textbook page 17, so let me just zoom in out over here, P5 textbook page 17, you realize that the definition is over here. Okay, fertilization occurs when the male reproductive cells, male reproductive cells fuse with the female reproductive cells. Okay, and it occurs after pollination. So straight up, this is the answer. Okay. Okay, for this, so it's kind of like a textbook answer. So for this, okay, so you can just briefly talk about this as the male reproductive cells. Okay, male reproductive cells it fuses with the female reproductive cells. Good enough. Okay, there's another way to write it. You can talk about the fusion of the male and female reproductive cells. This is also another way to talk about the definition of fertilization. So let's move on to question number 9, B and C, which shows you this diagram. The diagram below shows the female reproductive systems in a human. See, so then they show you C. Okay, C in this case, it shows you this part. This is the ovary, and this is also actually your ovary. Okay, so and this part over here is actually your womb. Okay, and somewhere around here, right, it should be your fallopian tube. Okay, fallopian tubes. Okay, in this part. Okay, this is where your sperms, right, will fuse just with egg cell. Okay, this location, and then when they become the fertilized eggs will roll into the womb and develop into a baby over there. Okay, so name the part of the female reproductive cells where the fertilized egg develop into a baby. Okay, where is it? It is at the womb. Okay, another name for the womb will be the uterus. Okay, so both are acceptable. Okay, womb will be much easier to spell lah. Okay, in this case, so a woman have part C being removed. So they tell you, okay, woman have a part C being removed. Okay, so the doctor informed her she still can have baby. Okay, why is that so? Okay, because in every female human being, right, you have not only one, but you have two ovary. You have two ovaries. So even if one is being removed, there's still one more that can still produce the egg, and then the sperm still can meet with that egg cell that's produced from the other ovary, and to allow fertilization to happen. So the choice over here is being made in the question. Okay, so she still can have baby. Already mentioned in the question, don't really have to write this. So it's really talking about the evidence and the reasoning part. Okay, so the evidence is that there's still one ovary remaining in her body that can produce and release the eggs. Okay, so the reasoning will be the sperm can still fuse with an egg for fertilization to occur. Once fertilization occur, baby could have developed from there. Okay, question number 10 over here is actually question number 10 is actually a PSLE 2020 question number 33. Okay, this is actually an actual PSLE question, so basically they just changed the name a little bit lah. Okay, so bees are commonly found near flowering plant. Describe how bees help the plant to reproduce. So in this case, right, to break this down, this question a little bit, right, how plants reproduce, there are 4 processes: pollination, fertilization, seed dispersal, germination. So these are the 4 main processes. So bees being an animal, okay, which process does it play a part? It will play a part in pollination as well as seed dispersal. So in this case, right, they already tell you it's a flowering plant, so most likely got to deal with flower. So usually, right, when there's an animal comes into play and there's a flower, right, we are going to mostly talk about pollination. Okay, because when does seed dispersal come into play? Seed dispersal can only come into play, right, when it is a fruit. Okay, in this case, so the general rule of thumb is that if you see animal and you see a flower, most likely we're going to talk about pollination. Okay, but if today they give you a fruit, then they tell animal, then most likely it's going to be seed dispersal. So basically, describe how bees help the plant to reproduce. In this case, we are really talking about pollination. So let me draw your flower. So let's say we have the stigma, we have the ovary over here, then we have the anther. Okay, anther, stigma. Okay, so now let me try to replicate this whole thing again. Okay, so then we have a bee. Okay, so how does this bee help the flower to pollinate? So first of all, you will go in to get the nectar, right? While going in to get the nectar, some of the pollen grain will get transferred onto the body, and then when it goes to another flower, the pollen grain get transferred onto the stigma. So the main idea over here is that the pollen grain from the anther get attached or transferred onto the bee's body and transfer onto the stigma. This is really about the pollination process. So to put it in words, it will be something like this. Okay, the bee transfer pollen grain from anther to stigma of the flower. Good enough. Okay, so these are the main 4 words. 1, 2, 3, 4 to really describe the very basic level of pollination. Okay, so moving on. Okay, Jamie investigated the effect of substance X on bee. Okay, the effect of substance X on bee. Okay, with 2 containers P and Q of the same size inside a circular cage. So over here, P with sugar water, which serve or more or less serve to be as a nectar to attract the bee. Q with sugar water with X. So basically, they are trying to tell you this one got X. Okay, this one got no X over here. Okay, Jimmy introduced bee into the cage, close the opening, count the number of times the bee visited each container for a duration of 3 hours on day 1, day 5, and day 10. So she counted, this is a verb in this case, so this is actually your measured variable. Measured variable, this is actually your measured variable. Or this is your result. So in this case, right, to pick it up, what is the change variable? The change variable is the presence of substance X. Okay, one got X, one don't have X. Okay, suggest how the arrangement of the container in the cage allowed for a fair test. So you take a look at this design. How come she designed in this way? She designed in this way, there's a purpose. So imagine this is the bee, right? Okay, the bee, which is over here. Okay, if you design in such a way, right, the only outcome is that, right, they will either go towards Q or they will go towards P. But do you notice that they are of a equal distance? Okay, they are of an equal distance. Okay, they are of an equal distance. Because eventually, right, you don't want to change the distance in such a way that the bee prefer to go to one container, not because they have substance X, it's because they are nearer. Okay, they are nearer, they go towards that, and this will affect your result in this case. Then in this case, the number of times the bee visited a container will be affected by 2 things: the distance between the opening as well as the container, as well as the presence of substance X. So in this case, it will not be a fair test. So in this case, how come the arrangement help it to become a fair test? Because the distance from the opening to the container remains the same. Okay, the distance is the same and will not affect the number of times the bee visited the container in this case. So basically, we are trying to use this format, okay, to ensure that the constants remain the same and does not affect the measured variable. Okay, so the key part is this: the distance from the opening to the container remain the same. Okay, we are trying to control for this. Okay, so the number of times the bee visited a container on day 1, day 5 versus day 10 are being shown. So as you can see, 1, 5, and 10. But you take a look at this. Describe, okay, how X affect the number of times bee visited both container from day 1 to day 10. Describe. Okay, they did not ask you to explain. Basically, this is more like a state question. Okay, don't need to explain. Look at the graph. Tell me what happened. Okay, so in this case, right, let us put it a little bit with some annotation. We know that P is the one without X. Okay, Q is the one with X. Okay, so this one got no X. This one got has X. Okay, so can see from here, right, the one with X. So if we were to draw a line, you can see the one with X actually increases. With X, the B visited more times, right? Okay, but can you take a look at this, the one without X? The one without X. So if I were to draw a line and combine all the bars together, the line went down, it decreases, right? What does it mean? It means that without X, okay, B visited less to the container. Okay, so it shows you that the B went to container P less times. Okay, so how do you describe for this part? Basically, this is more like a relationship, but you have to write it in a very different manner. Okay, so point 1. Okay, the presence of X increases the number of B's visited Q over the period of 10 days or over the 10-day period. Okay, so in this case, I link the change variable, the presence of X. What does it do? Increase the numbers of B visited Q over a period of 10 days. Okay, so I try to relate X with the measured variable. Okay, because the question asked me to do so, I have to relate X with the number of times the B visited. Okay, then of course the second point, without X, what happened? Okay, point 2, without X, does it remain the same or does it decrease? So in this case, it shows a decrease, right? So the absence of X, okay, let me highlight in blue, the absence of X decreases the number of B visited P over the same period. So this is really actually how you describe the relationship when your change variable is actually not represented by number. Your change variable is actually represented by a yes or no. It's either present or absence. So this is actually how you can write a relationship statement or a conclusion statement based on whatever information that you have over here. Okay, increases. Okay, question number 11. The flower of plant M grow in clusters and produce juicy and sweet smelling fruit as shown in the diagram. So in this case, cluster means they are close to each other. Okay, juicy and sweet smelling. Okay, so I see flower, I see fruits, then they ask you what is processes X and Y. Use the information in the diagram above to answer the following question. Okay, so in plant reproduction, there's only 4 main processes: pollination, fertilization, seed dispersal, germination. Okay, so as mentioned, if you were to break these two parts, this part happens usually during the flower stage. Okay, seed dispersal happen during the fruit stage. So can you see that flower, then X and Y versus fruit? So in this case, this is very obvious. Pollination first, followed by fertilization. So process X will be pollination. Okay, process Y, fertilization. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, explaining how producing flower in clusters is a good thing for plant M. Okay, it's a good thing. Okay, it's advantage. Okay, why is it a good thing? Okay, so you think about it, when they are in cluster, when they are nearby each other, right? So what will happen? Okay, the insect, let's say, is being pollinated by insect. Okay, can come around very easily to get the nectar from the nearby flower. So they don't have to cross a very long distance. So if they are nearby, it's easily for them to go from one flower to the other flower. And then what will happen? This will increase the chance of the pollen grain landing on their body and transferring on the stigma. Because if you travel shorter distance, the chance of the pollen grain get blown away from the body is somewhat lower. It is so that having said that, so more of it will get transfer onto the stigma. So this is really to what? Increase the rate of successful pollination. Okay, because in this case, right, even if the insects were to get the pollen grain, before it goes to the next flower, right, the pollen grain might have fall off, right? So then this reduces the chance of pollination. But if they are very, very nearby, maybe before the pollen grain have a chance to fall off, it already landed on the stigma because of the short distance between the flower. Okay, so in this case, let me show you in this part. So this is actually somewhat the clue, the cluster part. Okay, the flower in the cluster. Okay, so you don't really have to write this. So the flower are located close to each one another. They're very nearby. So the reasoning is that this increases the chance of pollen grain from a nearby anther being transferred onto the stigma, which increases the rate of pollination. Okay, this part will be how you would answer for part B. Basically, to increase the chance of pollination. Okay, so to explain or elaborate this part further is that, right, okay, being clustered together, right, the flower also provide a larger landing platform. So in this case, right, when they are closer nearby, right, it's like that the insect have a landing place for them, so they can fly shorter distance and they will not be so tired easily. And then they can jump from flower to flower more easily. And then because they jump from flower to flower more easily, they spend less time traveling a longer distance, increase the chance of pollination as well. Okay, so in this case, it's really about this. Okay, increase the chance of successful pollination. Okay, so suggest how the seeds of plant M is being dispersed. So before you talk about this, right, you really have to look at the diagram. Okay, so what are the evidence? The evidence is really this part. Sweet, juicy and sweet smelling flesh. Okay, what would this do? Okay, in this case, right, they will most likely attract animals. To do what? The animals will come and do what? The animal will come and eat the flesh. Okay, once they eat the flesh, the seeds over here, they either, number one, they get thrown away. Okay, so when they get thrown away, the seeds are usually thrown further away from the parent plant. Okay, so usually those that get thrown away are the seeds that are too big. Okay, or another thing is that the seeds may be eaten by the animal. So when they get eaten by the animal, right, the seeds are usually indigestible. That means they will pass out together with their stools. Okay, stools in this case. Okay, so they'll be passed out together with their stools. The seeds is inside, right? But now, because they are being passed out, okay, the animal would have already brought the seed to another location further away from the parent plant. So in this case, there is a dispersal action going on. Okay, so how to actually write this part? Let me show you to you on this part. So because the question never say whether is it a large seed or small seed, okay, so the diagram is also not very clear. So I can let's say if it's a large seed, and this is how I would have answered. So either answer, it should be fine because the question is not that clear. Okay, so you can talk about the evidence. This is the evidence. Okay, the juicy and sweet smelling flesh will attract animal to eat the fruit and throw or discard the seed further away from the parent plant. This is the dispersing action. Okay, further away from the parent plant. This part is quite important. Okay, so answer to, let's say small seed. Okay, the juicy and sweet smelling flesh, same idea, evidence, will attract animals, still attract animals, okay, to eat it together with the seeds. Okay, so the animal to eat it together with the seeds, which are then passed out in their droppings, okay, in their stools at a location further away from the parent plant. So these are the two ways that the seeds could have been dispersed, either by throwing away or get dispersed through their droppings. Okay, so with that, this is for this question. Let's move on to the last question. Okay, Joe found two fruit Y and Z in the park and conducted an experiment to find out how the length of the fruit's wing-like structures, okay, how the length of the fruit's wing-like structures affect the time taken for the fruit to reach the ground. So he released them from the same height. So this is trying to tell you I'm trying to do a fair test. Okay, because the height of release might have affect the time taken for it to reach the ground. Okay, so this is a constant. Okay, and recorded the time taken for each fruit to reach the ground. So very clear, this is change variable. Okay, this is your measured variable. Very clear cut on this part. Okay, so he recorded his result. The result is that fruit Y, can see this part, and fruit Z, okay, this one took 12 seconds, this one took 8 seconds, this one took longer, this one took shorter. Okay, straight away I can compare the result. Okay, so then they ask you, based on this, which one do you think will be further away from the parent plant? Okay, so imagine this is the parent plant. Okay, most likely Y will be here. Okay, the one with a longer wing. Okay, X will be somewhere here, shorter wing. Because if you realize this one took 8 seconds, right? It falls to the ground faster. This one took 12 seconds, take a longer time to fall to the ground. So obviously, if you were to compare this, which one dispersed further? It should be Y. In this case, it should be Y. Okay, so the choice is very clear cut. Okay, so Y. Okay, for this part. Okay, because why? It took longer time, or it takes the longer time to reach the ground as compared to fruit X. Okay, so it means that it can stay in the air for a longer period of time and to be carried further away by the wind. Okay, for this part. Okay, so explain what will happen to the seed if there's totally no wind at all for extended period of time. Okay, so you have to understand that even though there's no wind, there could be a chance that the seeds will just fall on its own. Okay, and then they will just land somewhere. Okay, and then if the condition is correct, when there is WOW, water, oxygen, and warmth, they will still germinate. But what will happen to the seeds in this case? So the first up is that, okay, without wind, of course, both seeds will take a shorter time to reach the ground. That means they will drop faster. If they drop faster, they land closer to the parent plant. Drop faster, land closer. Okay, okay. So let me put it this way: no wind, drop faster. Okay, that's a safe assumption. Drop nearer. Okay, so when they drop nearer, right, what happened? They are now closer to the parent plant. Because when they are closer to the parent plant, if they were to germinate from there, there will be overcrowding and there will be competition for a few things. Okay, sunlight, water, space, and mineral source. So these are the things that the young plant will compete with the parent plant. So in this case, generally it will be unhealthy. For at least for the young plants itself. Okay, with that. Okay, I'm going to go through the top part of the question again, and then you can review the questions accordingly. Okay. Okay, so this is the first part of the MCQ. Okay, question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, with that, thank you very much.